This is a real story. It happened on December 5th, 1945, only a few months after the end of the Second World War. 5 United States Navy planes left Fort Lauderdale, Florida, for a normal training flight over the Atlantic Ocean. The men expected to return before dinner. Instead, their flight became one of the most famous missing aircraft cases in American history. The group was called Flight 19. The planes were TBM Avenger torpedo bombers, strong military aircraft that had been used during the war. They were not small or weak machines. They were built for long flights over the sea. On that afternoon, 14 men were on board the 5 planes. Some were experienced, and some were still learning. Their job was to practice navigation over open water. The training exercise had a clear plan. The planes would fly east from Naval Air Station Fort Lauderdale and make a practice bombing run. Then they would continue along a planned route and return to the base. It was the kind of mission Navy pilots had done many times before. It was not meant to be dangerous. The flight leader was Lieutenant Charles C. Taylor. He was not a beginner. He had many hours of flight experience and had served during the war. Still, the sea can make even good pilots feel unsure. Over land, roads, towns, rivers, and railways can help a pilot understand where he is. Over the ocean, there is often only sky and water. Flight 19 took off in the early afternoon. At first, nothing seemed unusual. The planes flew toward the practice area and completed the bombing part of the exercise. After that, something went wrong. The exact moment is still not fully known because the aircraft never came back. No final report was written by the men themselves. Radio messages later showed that the pilots had become confused about their position. Taylor believed that his compasses were not working correctly. He also seemed to think that the flight might be over the Florida Keys, a chain of islands south of Florida. If that was true, then the correct way home would be different from the way home from the Bahamas. This was the central problem. Many later studies suggest that Flight 19 was probably not over the Florida Keys. It was more likely near the Bahamas, east of Florida. If Taylor believed he was in one place while he was really in another, every decision after that could move the planes farther from safety. The other pilots were worried. Some radio messages suggest that at least one pilot thought they should fly west. In that area, flying west was usually the safest choice because the coast of Florida was to the west. But radio signals were weak and broken. The weather was getting worse. The sun was going down. Over the ocean, the line between water and sky can disappear quickly in the evening. At the naval base, people began to understand that the training flight was in trouble. Men listened to the radio and tried to guide the pilots. They asked for positions. They tried to send instructions. But Flight 19 could not give a clear location. The pilots had fuel, but not forever. Every minute mattered. The story became more frightening because the problem was not a sudden crash. It was a slow loss of certainty. The planes were still flying. The men were still alive. They could talk by radio. But they did not know where they were, and the people on land could not find them. A wrong course over the Atlantic could mean hundreds of empty miles. As evening came, the weather became rougher. Reports from the area described stronger winds and poor conditions. The Atlantic was not a quiet blue map. It was a moving, dark, difficult place. If the planes ran out of fuel, the pilots would have to land on the water, A sea landing in darkness and bad weather would be extremely dangerous. The Navy started a search. Ships and aircraft were sent out to look for the missing planes. One of the rescue aircraft was a Martin PBM Mariner flying boat. It left Naval Air Station Banana River in Florida that evening with 13 crew members. Its mission was to search for Flight 19 and help bring the lost men home. Then the rescue plane also disappeared. This second loss made the night even more tragic. A ship in the area reported seeing an explosion in the sky and an oil slick on the water. The PBM Mariner had a known problem. Under some conditions, fuel vapor could make it dangerous. Many investigators believe the rescue aircraft probably exploded during the search. But like Flight 19, it was not recovered in a way that gave a complete answer. For days, the search continued. The Navy used many aircraft and ships. They covered a huge area of ocean. Families waited for news. At first, people could hope that the pilots had landed somewhere or that a ship might find survivors. But as the days passed, hope became smaller. No confirmed wreckage from Flight 19 was found. No bodies were recovered. No final message explained everything. The official investigation looked for a practical cause. At first, the loss was connected to navigation mistakes. The main idea was that Taylor had become confused about his position. Later, after objections from Taylor's family, the Navy changed the final cause to unknown. This did not mean that the Navy believed in a mystery beyond nature. It meant that, without the planes and without the men, the evidence was not enough for a final, certain answer. Over time, Flight 19 became tied to the legend of the Bermuda Triangle. The Bermuda Triangle is a loose name for an area of the Western Atlantic, often described as lying between Florida, Bermuda, and Puerto Rico. Books, television programs, and articles later used Flight 19 as one of the great examples of the Triangle's mystery. But the real story is already powerful without adding fantasy. 5 military planes left on a normal training mission. Their leader became uncertain about location and direction. Radio contact became confused. Weather and darkness made the situation worse. A rescue plane went out to help and was lost too. In total, 27 men disappeared that day, 14 from Flight 19 and 13 from the rescue aircraft. The mystery remains because the ocean kept the physical evidence. If the wreckage had been found, investigators might have learned more about the final minutes. They might have known how far the planes flew, when they ran out of fuel, or whether they landed together or separately. Without that evidence, the story stays open at its most painful point. Still, there are lessons in the facts we do know. Navigation was harder in 1945 than it is today. Pilots did not have modern GPS. They depended on compasses, maps, radio, weather reports, and training. Over water, a small mistake could grow into a serious emergency. If a leader was uncertain, the whole group could become uncertain with him. There is also a human lesson. The men of Flight 19 were not characters in a legend. They were real people doing a difficult job after years of war. The crew of the PBM Mariner were real people too. They did not fly into the night because they wanted to become part of a mystery. They flew because other men were missing and needed help. That is why the story should be remembered carefully. It is easy to make the Bermuda Triangle sound magical. It is harder and more respectful, to see the event as a chain of human decisions, technical limits, weather, darkness, and bad luck. Those things may sound ordinary, but together they can be stronger than any legend. Today, Flight 19 is still discussed by historians, aviation fans, and people who love unsolved stories. Some focus on the triangle, others focus on navigation, weather, and radio communication. No confirmed discovery has closed the case. The last course of Flight 19 remains unknown. But one fact is clear. On December 5th, 1945, 27 men did not return from the Atlantic. Their story is not only about a mysterious place on a map, it is about the thin line between routine and danger, and about how quickly a normal afternoon can become history.